everyone, it's Jen.
And Ali.
And you're listening to Rising Within Podcast,
a show where we come together to connect the heart, head, and spirit.
Just like rhythm, lyrics, and melody.
That's why also I love Stranger Things.
This is why I haven't seen it.
Okay, wait, pause. Why? Okay, so wait, I need to know why you haven't seen it.
Because scary movies actually scare me.
Okay,
scary shit actually scares me.
Okay, so this is a good question then, because this is my follow-up question with you. So
yes,
from the line of work from what you do and what I am expanding into because of the mediumship and all that jazz.
Yes.
Do we have a threshold that just doesn't able to handle this because it's like sort of our reality in some respects? Because I can't.
I love diving into this right now. I love this. Okay, so I think it's because for me personally, I think it's because within my mind, whether it's a conscious thought or not, it's always floating around in the back of my head. I have awareness within my mind, like there could be thread of truth to this. But then also my imagination is just bonkers as a person. And that may have nothing to do with being a psychic medium. Like I'm just very imaginative. And I think we spoke about it.
She's got a lot of planets and her sun and her moon in the 12th house, which is exactly what she's just explaining. So
yes, but we talked about this in the last episode where we expressed that you and I both have entire worlds of imagination within our minds.
Yeah. Well, you were the one who pointed out that like you come into mine and you could like see a galaxy. I was like, really? Okay. Like
yes. But because that galaxy exists, there's then awareness of there's more expanded awareness of potential of things within life, of what could happen, what could manifest. There's more awareness on multiple spiritual levels. I don't know why scary movies scare me. I think it's like, a little bit of everything. I think there's a bit of a cocktail there as to why they freak me out. However, I still go through periods where I seek out the adrenaline rush that you can only get from being scared from a really good scary movie.
Okay, Allison. So this is so funny because I consider myself a masochist when it comes to this sort of stuff because I actually do not do well, but I also like watch it or something. And it's been like my whole life. And like my family knows about it. My roommates know about it. It's just not kosher because even when I was like living back home and I'm like, I'm like 30 guys, I was living back home and I've always sensed energy in a room before bed. And it's always been an ongoing thing for me that I didn't realize had something to do with what I'm, like opening up to different worlds and understanding that there are things that we can't see beyond this dimension. So as like a little girl, it used to be a battle with my sister in the light. Like it just every night me having to turn the hall light on and her like being like she needs to sleep in complete darkness. But it's like I was so terrified as a little kid. My cat would have to come and sleep with me because she was helping me neutralize the energy and protecting me. But I didn't realize that until now too. But at the same time, like I seek it out sometimes because I'm an overthinker and the only way that I can shut my mind off, this is so messed up, is it's like, okay, I'm going to watch this scary thing over here and I'll be thinking about whether I'm going to live or die.
You're shocking your system. You're shocking your system with it.
Paranormal Activity, people laugh because they're like, that movie was a joke. I was like, that movie literally made
I haven't seen it.
Sleep with a light on for a month. And I was living with roommates at university who had to walk me to the bathroom because I was like, or they would hear me because we would be we were on the top floor and there were staircases like right by where our dorm room was, and they would hear me go off the stairs and like, hey Jen, what's going on? Like God bless them because they were like, there were two other people in that room and I was like, hey guys, can we sleep with like maybe a light on tonight?
I haven't seen it, and I avoid certain horror movies too. So if a horror movie is more about spiritual stuff, like ghosts, or if a horror movie is based within the realm of reality, like say it's someone who stalks you, or it's someone that like is secretly living in your attic.
God no.
Like I stay away from shit like that. I cannot, because then I believe someone is secretly living in my attic, even if I don't have an attic. I believe it. I keep looking for the hatch. Like I know there's an attic here, and I keep looking for like the little pinholes of they fed a camera somewhere, right? Because like I just watched that. Yes, I get so like convinced that. So like this is the thing, is that when I go to watch scary movies, this is my process.
Okay.
I have to watch a scary film that has nothing Venn diagram in common with what I'm currently experiencing in life. So for example, I live now in like a tiny home kind of space. I could not watch something that's cabin in the woods kind of vibe. I could not because like it's too much like my real life.
Yeah.
But could I watch a scary movie or a horror film about an apartment building or a high rise? Absolutely. I don't live in one of those. So like my mind's not going to go crazy or wild with all these theories of like how someone's going to like slip through my window in the middle of the night and slit my throat. Like I just won't go there.
Right. I see what you're saying. Yeah. No, I so get that, because I think for me the mentality with ghosts is that you can't kill something that's already dead, right? So it's like there's less actually scare tactic for me when it comes to like serial killer stuff, because eventually you can they go. Maybe, you know, but I think with ghosts, I think that's something that really gets
They're
under my
not
skin.
tangible.
Yeah, because I think with paranormal activity, like they do it in a steady cam, so they make it seem like very like you're part of the scene, like Blair Witch Project, all that stuff, which I'll never watch. But you know, in order for you to make you feel like visually like you're there, and I think what really harmed my psyche was the idea that like this couple is together, and safety is such a huge part of what I need in a relationship or a dynamic, but the very fact that they're like sleeping next together and like they can't help each other. You know what I mean? They can't.
Oh no,
you know what I mean?
girl, no.
Because, sorry, there's a scene where like this entity of this pulls her out of the bed and drags her down the hallway, and he's just like in the bedroom, like trying to open the door, and he can't get to her. So I'm like, you know what? No, I'm far more scared of something like that, because I guess I'm more aware of the fact that there are so many things beyond the things that we can't see.
Yes.
That it's way scarier than me than something that like actually is real. Now, don't get me wrong, like I do get scared by that stuff too, but there is another level to the ghost stuff.
But like I do think it's important that we talk about what could actually happen. When I watch it from the vantage point of like I'm going to inform my audience
right
on like what could actually happen within a haunting, that sometimes pulls me out of being so present in I'm terrified in this moment, because I'm like, I got a job to do. I need to inform the masses as a psychic medium of like, could they really be dragged out of their bed and dragged down the hall?
Have you not gone into people's homes and cleared spaces? And like,
yes.
Okay, so here's the question, Allison. Let's segue here. Can you talk about like some of the experiences you've had?
Yes. Okay. So like I just did the Raven Simone staring off thing. It was very silent for a little bit because like I have to go through my Rolodex in my mind and my filing system of like all of
that. Did I tell you that this is this is what you do? That I
yes.
Okay, great. Because
so I just needed to do that to like go through my catalog of like all my experiences I've had, because it's also very hard for me to recall and retain this information.
Okay.
Because it's such a high vibration and it's not my shit. So I don't hold on to it.
Good.
So like, so then I have to revisit it in like my photo albums, my filing system, my whatever in my mind. I would say the most often occurrence that I have, I'm going to say like a top 5. Oh, Spirit is collating this for me and I am living for it right now. They are organizing the heck out of this information for me.
Great.
I'm going to say top 5 in no specific order of like what often I have dealt with in terms of hauntings and house clearings and cleansing. Number 1 on the list would be a portal or some form of energy has been opened up, which is inviting almost like a train station stop energies to just come and go as they please. So that often happens, like if that can sometimes pre-exist within a home, like you move in and you've got the portals in your house. But usually that happens, in my experience, I'm not saying this is the only way, usually that happens if there is someone spiritual residing within the home, if there's a medium residing within the home, if someone has been dabbling within spiritual stuff, but maybe not fully understanding the importance and process of protection on multiple layers and levels, as well as opening and closing energies. Like, let's talk about closing energies, because a lot of people don't bookend shit and they don't close stuff off. They pull out the Ouija board for like fun and giggles, but then they don't do anything. They throw the board back in the box and there's no like ending to the thing. So like you're leaving something wide open when you're doing that. So closing portals of energy. And usually you can feel or sense that kind of thing if there are certain rooms in your house you will not go into.
Right.
Or if there are certain corners. I find that this energy collects in corners of spaces or thresholds, like doorways, hallways, like basically like entry points or things like that. So portals would be one on the list. Human beings that were not great to begin with would be number 2 on the list. So like I've dealt with a lot of very oppressive male entity energy. A lot. So that's where you get more so the hauntings where you're hearing like the boot stomping on floorboards fairly aggressively. That's where you get like the women in the household having very radically different experiences than the men in a household. Sometimes also children will have very radically different experiences than others. And I don't want to just describe this to men, but like it's been more often than not that it happens to be male energy. There's also female energy that I've encountered that is aggressive in personality in this way. But that would be like number 2 on the list. Number 3 on the list for entities, hauntings within homes. This reminds me of perhaps the movie Carrie. Okay. There can sometimes be somebody that's within that, when we were talking beautifully about the age of 12 earlier, or those rites of passage, those significant ages of rites of passage. There can sometimes be someone young living with a home that's going through changes of some kind, and they may be inheriting or coming into gifts, intuitive ability, mediumship, and them going through their changes can manifest things that aren't even necessarily sentient in nature.
Wow. Okay. This is interesting. Okay. So this is just from your perspective of a client experiences helping them with these different energies. Now,
yes.
So because I can understand that some people don't cross over. So why haven't they crossed over?
Why haven't they crossed over? I'll get to number 4 on my list, which is super traumatic passing or death. Extremely traumatic passing or death. There was this farmhouse that I went to, this property that I went to, that I had to cleanse the entire property, and it was huge. There was like, I was there for hours and hours. I did not bring enough material. There's not enough sage in the world to cleanse this property. I had to do a lot of it more so energetically than physically. But I was channeling like a death via farming tools and machinery. I won't get into detail about it, but like you can only just imagine.
Oh God, no.
Yes. So like traumatic death or passing, number 4 on my list, is what would create like that. And that is often why someone won't move on to, is if their passing was unexpected, traumatic in any way, they get stuck within that time frame of them passing or dying. But I also often reference, like, for lack of a better term, I'm going to use this, I also often reference ghost, Alzheimer's, or dementia. Like there's a forgetting that happens when they're stuck, and if they've been in such a traumatic incident, it's even more likely that there's forgetting that happens, to the point of like sometimes they don't know that they're dead. That level of forgetting. But that's also where the forgetting comes into play, of like they still think their home is their home. And that reminds me of that movie with Nicole Kidman and her kids. I forget what it's called.
The others.
Because we don't discover, okay, spoiler alert, so like close your ears off if you don't want to hear this, but we don't discover until the end of the movie that Nicole Kidman and her kids living in this haunted house are actually the ghosts.
Mm-hmm. Or Sixth Sense too.
Sixth Sense. I was about to say Sixth Sense with Bruce Willis. We don't find out until the end of the movie. Again, close your ears if you don't want to hear the spoiler alert, that Bruce Willis is actually a ghost. So like oftentimes they don't know that they're dead. Yeah. And honestly, crossing a spirit like that and dealing with a spirit like that is very much like, at that point, I'm not pulling out the sage or the Palo Santo or salt. I've identified that they don't know that they're even dead. That is at the point where you just need to talk to somebody and listen and hold space and treat them like a human being. Oftentimes with the ones that are stuck, reminding them of where they have come from so that they have awareness of where they are now in order to transition into, but you can also move into a better space for yourself. You're now beyond all those things that we're talking about and acknowledging. And I acknowledge your pain and your trauma and everything that you've been through. There's support for you, but not here. You're not going to get that here.
Okay, so here's my question, right? Because we all have guides. So when they pass away dramatically like that, aren't there guides there to greet them?
This is where some of the TV shows and movies do get it right, because like I've seen it maybe in like Ghost Whisperer, I've seen it maybe in Dead Like Me, and shows like that. They sometimes see the light, or the light chases them, or it's hard for me to put into words at that point because all of this operates on a level that's like beyond our understanding.
Right.
They are so stuck and tunnel visioned that they see it sometimes, but they possess fear of the change, right? Which is a very human thing, possessing fear of change.
Okay, so pause. So you're saying the ones that stick around,
yes,
they pass away, they see the light, their guides are there, but they don't go towards it.
Sometimes they don't always go towards it.
Okay.
Because it was traumatic.
Right.
And they're confused.
Right. Okay, I understand what you're saying.
And so if you're presented with something, and I mean, this is also just a very human thing and psychology. If you're presented with something really good after having experienced something that you're confused about or that was perceived as bad, do you immediately trust the good thing?
Yeah, I guess so. It's so interesting because from my perception and understanding and learning about this through Dolores Cannon, guys, she's great, and also different other people that talk about this that are specialized in the passing between life and death. This is helpful for me to hear your take on it and bringing context into it, because I guess even from Surviving Death from Netflix, which was really great, recommend it. The first episode was like, if you've had a near-death experience, you get sort of this glimpse of this light and this warmth and this like support around you that we can't see right now on this plane existence. And a lot of the people that say that they passed, they're like, I don't want to come back to my body. I want to stay.
Yeah.
And then,
but those are the people who are meant to stay, which is why it's a near-death experience and it's not a true death.
Exactly. And like, let's be real. Like, we have near-death experiences without actually dying a lot on Earth, right? You know, like job stuff or things that happen that were like, this feels like I'm dying. I need to.
Dark night of the soul with spiritual awakening. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So this is really interesting. So I haven't had a seeing. Actually, I've seen a woman when I was younger, a pilgrim woman sitting watching me sleep. And I'll never forget that. I haven't seen that obviously since, but I have, my friend has come and stayed with me in Vancouver, stayed with me for the week. I was living in an apartment underground. She woke up the next morning terrified and told me about this woman. And I could tell by how scared she was that it was not good. And she was like, she is not a good woman. And funnily enough, shortly after that, like obviously I was like, she left and I was like in this apartment being like, what WTF? Like,
what do I do now? Great.
So my apartment flooded and I had to evacuate anyways, right? Which is like, I feel like, of course.
The universe, yeah.
The universe is like, yeah.
Also, water is very cleansing. Can we talk about that? Water is very purifying and cleansing. So
yes. So basically, the problem solved itself. But I definitely told my two friends, and they were like, "We are not coming over to your house ever again." But I was like, I don't know. The apartment flooded and I had to evacuate and I got a better situation out of it.
I've had some pretty extreme experiences, but I think that's just job hazard.
Allison, enlighten us. Share.
When I was younger, okay, baby Allison.
Yeah.
This I've never told anybody.
Okay.
Yeah. When I was really young, I would chronically have the same dream, although it's like that weird state of, am I asleep? Am I awake? What's happening? And the tossing, turning, where you actually sleep and are awake multiple times in the night. So very confusing and kind of tampering with the mind a little bit. I used to always see like these red eyes watching me while I was sleeping when I was young. Always. I was always watched while I was sleeping. And like now we're not talking about ghosts, we're talking entity kind of stuff.
Did you get a good feeling from it or not necessarily?
It's a mixed bag. Like when it comes to entities, it's very hard to label and ascribe good and bad because it's multifaceted and complex as fuck. And it's very hard at that point for us to really discern motivation because motivation is coming from a space that's not human. And we understand human motivation to some extent. How do you understand like non-human entity motivation? Very difficult, right? So hard, it's hard to ascribe as good or bad. Does it make you feel bad in the moment because something's watching you in that moment of vulnerability when something should not be watching you? Yes, absolutely. Does the color red itself come forward as something that is ascribed to like more polarizing emotions?
Right.
And like red being stop, red being passion, red being anger, red being like vitality to some extent. Like, yes. And then also on top of that, I always get a sense of that it's complex because like it might be a bad feeling because their motives are not about me. Their motives are not human, but their motives may be more in alignment with curiosity. And curiosity for me represents inaction. If I get a sense or feeling that an entity's watching me, but it's coming from a space of inaction, okay. But like, you know, step off, don't watch me, like go away, and I deal with it. But then I'm not necessarily scared because you're coming from a space of being curious and maybe taking notes or learning something for whatever motives you have. But the inaction, the curiosity leads me to understand you're not going to try to interact with me beyond watching. Cool. But also, I do not give you permission to watch. And I mean, like, we have that power. We have that power within us to be like, to set those boundaries within energy and within spirit. We just forget that we have that power within us to manifest that. So like when I was young, yeah, I used to always have something watching me while I was sleeping. I'm pretty sure I've had fairly disordered sleep for most of my life, honestly, between entities watching, dreams that are prophetic in nature, and then dreams that could be past lifetimes. And then now I'm going to loop back to Doctor Strange. And this is not spoiler. I don't think it is. We're really getting into the multiverse with this next leg of Marvel's journey, right? And so one of the concepts of the multiverse introduced in Doctor Strange is that the dreams that we have are the existence of other versions of ourselves within the other universes.
Well, that's just also why I love the movie Inception, because it's like a dream.
I haven't seen it.
Oh, you should watch. Okay,
but it's scary, right? This is why I avoid scary stuff.
I wouldn't. Well, it depends on what your threshold is. I would not categorize Inception as scary at all. It's like a dream within a dream. It's action. It's psychological. Like it's a movie you have to watch a couple of times to really digest it. And I obviously do that just innately because it's like I'm watching the movie start to end, you know, for the story, for the editing, for the character development, for a lot of different things. And
cinematography, sound.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's so complex. It's not something you get on the first go. So it's a movie that really fascinated me because it's playing with the idea of reality, right? And distortion. And when you go into your subconscious, you can plant ideas, right?
Yes.
So it's just very, I don't know. I really love that kind of stuff, but I haven't, to be honest, it's funny. I haven't really gotten so much into the movie world since Spiritual Awakening. I've kind of like taken a step back from movies entirely. And I've just been like these last 2 years, which we'll talk more about. It's just been more trying to figure out and navigate stuff without escaping into different worlds or different realities. Because I feel like my life when things started to open up, when spirit guides and I started talking more conversation based back and forth, when things started to happen like that, my reality became a little bit more like you know, things that are here and things that aren't here. So it was like it's
interesting that you're saying this because we have a parallel here and you're gonna love it. Okay, you're so gonna love it. When I started opening up as well, I started coming away from things like that, certain forms of media, the news outlets in a huge way. Books that were of certain subject matter, and it eventually extended to the food I would eat, the products I would use, everything. I started almost like multiple layers of shedding of skin, of allowing myself to engage and consume certain forms of media or certain products. And a lot of it had to do with the constant communication that you're talking about with the spirit guides. It's information overload. If you're already receiving so much without having to do a damn thing from your spirit guides, you're then going to introduce like stimulus or catalysts that present other ideas for them to build off of. No, thank you. I'm only human at the end of the day. And this brain can only hold so much.
That's the key word where you just said that. I feel I'm overstimulated as is.
Yes.
And I need to lessen my stimulation. And I obviously am now aware, like, to be honest, and it may be something I need to work through a little more, is like TikTok, right? Because that's become my next sort of stimulating thing before bed or whatever, and minimizing that too. Because when I'm scrolling through something or I'm shuffling like a crazy person of music, I know that it's because I'm looking for something, I'm searching for something, and I just need to actually come back to my own.
It's a moment of distraction from whatever it is that you can't sit with in that moment. There's something you cannot sit with. Doesn't have to be something huge. It could be Princess and the Pea. There's a pea under 100 of those mattresses, but something has disrupted the flow.
Yeah.
And so, like, I use discernment when it comes to stuff like TikToks. I really test my For You page and the algorithm and spirit. And if I get like 5 to 10 videos deep and I'm finding I'm scrolling quickly through like 50, even at least 50%, I put TikTok down, because I'm like, TikTok, you're not getting me right now. So you don't get to have my attention. You don't get to, but the next time I open up my For You page, if you get me and these videos are talking to me, okay, I'll spend a little bit more time with you.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting to say that, because my guys will put, when they want me to get off, they'll put like really awful videos, and then like things that are like not what I would want to see,
Yes.
And then it comes out of, it'll be like good video. And then it's like, oh yeah. And I'll get to one where it's like something not I want to absorb, and I'm like, I get off, because it's like, that was them being like
very much,
Yeah. So this is the thing, right? Things really stick with my psyche. I think that's also partly it. That's why I'm selective about even who I interact with on a basis. Like, guys, if you and I even had like a small window of a moment in life that wasn't like last longing, but because my Mercury is in retrograde, it stays with me a lot longer than I would like it to. And so I feel like I have to be really careful about these sort of things and when I enter into my system. And so actually, I would love to ask you this, because I was part of a medium meetup during 2020 when I was like trying to like find more people that were trying to explore this. Let's get together. Let's do a meditation. Let's see what shows up. Let's see if we can deliver messages for each other. Let's see what comes together. It was more of like a muscle of a practice. And there was one girl in our group who, I'll never forget this, was working at a university, and she was said to, there was a colleague of hers that she wasn't that close with, but she was a bright light, and she would always just like exude light. And she was leaving her office, and she said, I remember seeing her and being like, she should just be more selective about when she's shining, like, because they were leaving the office at nighttime, and she was like, ooh. So she saw her at nighttime, and she was like, had this split second of a thought of like, ooh, I don't know if she should be shining that bright this late. And she said, when I leave the office, I like put my cloak on and kind of disappear into the crowd. And unfortunately, that girl was attacked, and was, all this stuff happened, and it was on the news. And in our medium group, this girl was talking about how she would be flashed back to the scene of the crime. And like, she'd be doing her laundry, and it would just take her to these images. And she was like, I really can't get.
This is why I talked about closing energy. If that stuff is resurfacing, there is still, and cutting cords, there is something that's left open. There's a cord attached between you and that person energetically. There's something that's connecting you to that event as to why it's still resurfacing in your energy. That's the time you need to self-protect and cut cords. This is not mine. This is not me. I do not need to be revisiting this, because like, this is also in the past. This has happened. There's nothing to be done about this.
Well, I think part of the problem is that they hadn't found him yet. And she was saying, so like,
you can still cut it off at that point. You can still cut it off at that point.
They had started this like money thing to help, because she was like, she had to go to the hospital, and they didn't know she was going to live, etc. And she was like, I could sense the guy who attacked her was on the site trying to like
revisiting. Yeah.
And I was
revisiting.
Like,
this is a sick individual. See, now I'm tuning into it. This is why I avoid media and everything. And like, my arms are like going out and like goosebumps and stuff. This is somebody who's done this more than just this one time with this person.
It's so awful. I can't.
I have to say it now because me saying it is what helps to cut off the energy as well.
Okay.
Yeah. This is somebody who did this before. This is somebody who has a history of peeping. This is somebody who has a history of collecting trophies. This is somebody that is steps away where escalation could happen. The assault is kind of the tip of the iceberg. There's more. This is somebody who's on a path of some kind with this behavior. And from a very young age, like I'm seeing a 6-year-old boy, but I'm also seeing in my head, like family issues, fairly severe family issues, something between the dynamic of mother and son.
Jesus,
very like Oedipal.
Allison. How do you this is where I feel okay. Now this is actually helps maybe everyone understand why you and like say myself in a different way, because I don't channel like you do, can't put ourselves in like these movies and stuff, because it's like this is real life and you're like, I just told you a snippet of a situation and you're already like able to see this.
This is how it happens for me, but this is also why I've avoided that stuff. This is why I avoid
understand that. That's like a
why I
boundary.
groom what I consume. That's 100% why I groom what I consume.
Yeah.
And you should, whether you're psychic or not, whether you're spiritual or not, whether you're in tune or not, we should always be grooming what we consume on all levels.
100%.
Because that is self-awareness, that is self-care, that is you knowing your thresholds, but you also staying within your alignment. There's no need to radically consume all things. There's no need to radically be stimulated by all things and be presented by all things. Why? This world is over inundated and overstimulated to begin with, and it's only gotten worse with the amount of like platforms and forms of media and how things can come at you and how short these snippets are and how sometimes, and that's where like, don't even get me started on the consent side of it. That's where sometimes we have been exposed to something before we can even realize or think in our head or register, I don't want to be exposed to this.
Right.
It's so important to groom what we consume. So important. Constantly.
That should be the biggest takeaway from this episode.
Before I knew I was fully aware of being a psychic medium, is that I would always figure out the case before it was done. Always within the first 5 to 10 minutes of it being shown, I'd be like, oh, okay, so this person did this that way, and like they won't get caught, but then eventually that happens. Like, and I just assumed it was logic. I'm now more aware that it's not logic, it's not reason, but like I can consume those things because I was exposed from like a younger age to those things. So it's a little bit easier for me to consume the true crime stuff than the horror stuff, for sure. But I can't do it if it's unsolved. Like I can't, because it does to me exactly what just happened. It puts me in that moment immediately. What's important to note is recognizing when you're being pulled energetically into something that's left unfinished, and immediately back away and put your boundaries down energetically and spiritually, or find out the methods and ways that you can like drop a thread as quickly as you pick it up. Dropping a thread for me is like I had to go through saying a little bit of it, acknowledging a tiny bit of it, and then like an Etch-a-Sketch, shake, erase immediately. That's my process. Everyone's just going to be different. But acknowledging it for me for even like 10 seconds is enough for the thread. It's almost like when you go to shake somebody's hand and or somebody goes to touch you and it's not a touch that you want, right? So think about like self-defense moves. Sometimes self-defense moves start with leaning in or grabbing hold, and then you flip the script. That's essentially what I'm doing energetically, is I'm grabbing the thread long enough to identify and acknowledge while immediately like throwing it down in a way and backing off and being like, nope, we're done, and cutting off the energy.
So have you ever considered helping like people like detectives or things like that, like figure it out?
Yes.
Okay.
I've had brushes with that.
Okay. Through
my career. I've had a lot of unsolved stuff, even from family members that come to me for readings. I've read a lot of this stuff. I have. I remember one, I was at a show and it was more up north. There was this woman that's this unsolved case where she went missing, right? And immediately I connected to it and I said, okay, this happened in a remote area. There's a bit of a ravine, or there's like a curved road with a ravine going down. I'm seeing her at this curve with the ravine and the trees, and there's this car on the road, but for some reason there's one shoe of hers was found on the road. But then people went to search in the ravine and they could not find her. They could not find her body, but she's presumed to be gone. She is gone. I'm talking to her right now. I'm telling you, it's somebody that she knew. It's likely such and such person. Everything aligned with what I said. They're like, yep, that's who they suspected. That was the person of interest. Yep, there was a shoe found on the scene from her. Yes, it did happen within that environment that you're talking about. And yes, they could not find the body. I think I also said, and it rained soon after that. So the ground was really soft. Things had slid down and it completely disturbed the environment. And they were like, yep, that's also what happened. So like, yes, this has happened in my lifetime. I've never officially worked on anything. I do have the interest for it. I've always had the interest and curiosity for it, but I've always manifested the work that I receive will find me.
Yeah.
Right down to my clients. Like I don't go shaking the apple trees to like get the apples. It's like, no, it will come to me if it's something that's meant for me. And I have had people approach me for like people who are missing. I have had that. And then I sit down with a map and I, out of just wanting to help for like kindness out of my heart.
Yeah.
I sit down with a map and I try to like geographically come up with like the most likely path that someone could have taken, and then like starting point and ending point of where maybe a search could happen, because I've had people contact me that are part of a search party and wanting to kind of more definitively nail things down. So yes, it's happened, just not in a bigger, more official capacity for me. And I haven't sought out the work. I think that's the most important part.
Okay. Yeah. And that makes sense. I was going to say, your guides are pretty matter of fact when they're helping you deliver this message, but like, what's their take on like these situations with these people?
Look, this realm of existence, I don't know what everybody's been told if they've received the memo, but this realm of existence is not utopia.
No.
This is the realm of existence of School of Hard Knocks. This is the realm of existence of being tested. Some of us rise to that challenge and we create and grow in the most beautiful of ways. Some of us get very stuck and lost about what we don't have, what we can't accomplish. And then the most extreme examples of that would be people who feel the need to like harm others in order to feel any sense of fulfillment or accomplishment. What does Spirit think about this? Okay, Spirit loves us. Spirit wants to protect us. Not all spirits, but like, it's like spirit guides and whatnot, but they're also not human. And we have to remember that, because sometimes emotionally there's indifference from Spirit. When you ask me that kind of question, they look at me very much like matter of fact, like, well, this is the realm of existence you live in, and it just is what it is. That's just what exists in this space, is the spectrum and the dichotomy of having amazing, pioneering, provoking, inspirational people that create some of the most beautiful things we've ever had in this world, and really serve to open us up and further our knowledge and education, and really serve to further us as humanity. We can't have that without having the dredges of society too. So yeah, it's just something that is coexisting, because this is the nature of what this realm is about. This realm is college or university. And whether you choose to show up to class or do the homework and do the exams, that's up to you.
Right. So it's interesting because my take on it is Earth can be, it's like, I don't know, I don't want to offend anyone here, but this is just my understanding that, or theory, if you will, that Earth itself can be heaven and hell. And,
yes.
And when
coexistence.
Coexistence. And it's not about like afterwards going to heaven or hell. I feel like the actual existence here it exists here. And I feel like from learning about Dolores Cannon saying that like when we pass away, it's more like the only person that judges us is ourselves, and the way that our life, and we look at it and we're like, oh God, I can't believe I did this, right? Which I'm like, that would actually be hell enough for me, but it's like, so you learn and then you're able to like, okay, well, I want to come back and I want to try it a little differently or whatever it is. But yeah, because I think you'll always come into earth in the sense that, and by the way, this is the hardest place to be to yeah. So it's like looking at it, you'll always find strife and grief and suffering here. And you also find exactly what you said, like people that are inspiring you to become better. So it's really depending on where you're at. You'll see things the way you were from where you are and what you're trying to.
And you'll see things based on what you choose to consume.
Yes. Back to
go back to that.
Full circle consumption. Exactly. 100%. Absolutely. And I also believe based off of our own past lives and based off of our own karma here that we're here to learn, we gravitate towards things too. Like even the people that are into like maybe true crime or whatever and become detectives and are like, that's their trajectory here and they're wanting to learn and help.
Their life purpose.
Yeah, exactly. Like that takes a certain type of person. Like I really appreciate the people that are here, the plethora of people who are here doing different things because it's like, it takes a certain type of individual to take that role. Now, me, I can't do something like that. It will stay with me way longer than I would like it to. But even like I just watched the documentary, not just, but during Pisces season about the boys in the caves and being saved. And it was the real underlying tone of that.
Wait a second, the boys in the caves?
So you remember this because it was like, I forget where, actually, sorry, this is bad. I forget where it happened, but it happened overseas where there was 13-year-old boys that were a soccer team. They went and explored a cave. The water level rised and they had to get further and further into the cave so that they didn't drown. And there was no way for them to get out. So it became this huge news story, right? And they found their bikes and it became this whole journey of people trying to rescue these guys. And they brought in the Marines, right? And they also brought in these two individuals who are like, probably are my dad's age and they're like 60s. And they cave dive for fun and like dark, small crevices and like find this enjoyable. Like, and not everyone loves that. And as a result, when they were called in, they almost outshined the Marines because the Marines' job is to do it, but they don't find that comfortable or fun, right?
No.
So it was an interesting dynamic because like the Marines are like, oh, we don't worry, like these guys, but these like older guys are like, get out of our way. We know what we're doing here because they could stay for hours, like exploring caves for fun, right?
Yeah.
The Marines only made it to a certain point, and these guys were able to get further, but it was a very compelling story because it actually happened and like the problem solving that had it. And they actually brought in someone spiritual to come in who it's someone that they really renowned. I wish I remembered their name. I'm so sorry. I'll put it in the notes. Who came in and predicted. I mean, you guys should definitely watch this. But what I found really fascinating, these guys were talking about how they were not the popular guys in high school. They were the guys that got made fun of. They were the introverts. They were the ones that were kind of like weird, that find comfort in being solitude in these dark crevices of places. And they're like the heroes because we need people like that to do something like this that can shut off their minds, that are not, maybe socially inept and are able to just like do something without being so emotionally invested. And they all were, but not to the extent that like maybe somebody else would be. And they're like, that was very much the tone of the story, which I was like, yeah, that's
wow.
True. Like they're like, we're these guys that got made fun of in high school, but we love doing like weird stuff now. And we became these heroes just based on the fact that we're like really weird introverts. And I was like, hell yeah. Like, everyone exists for different reasons. They didn't know that was what they were going to do or that they were going to be needed. Obviously probably spirit did and our, maybe our soul contract before we came down here, but it's just interesting to me because everybody.
I think that there's a very important lesson in that, and that's that divine purpose emerges regardless of what you're choosing to do in your life. All you have to do is live it. You just have to trust that living the journey is enough.